everyone. I'm Christine Tulley, President and Executive Writing Coach at Defend, Publish, and Lead, and welcome to episode 245, Leave Margin. I've had quite the week. Anybody that knows me, and I've talked to people about this in my workshops, that this week was a little bit off the rails. It was a little bit full for a lot of some are sort of comical things, some are sort of stressful things. But in any event, I learned a good lesson about margin for this week. So if we define margin as just a little bit of space or a little bit of room in between activities. Sometimes you think about margin when you think about finances or how much, extra room you have to maybe make an investment. In this case, we're going to talk about margin as time and why you always should leave some extra time. This is something we know inherently, and one of the things that I think is sort of a consequence of faculty schedules getting busier, more people doing overload, more service activities, combined with some of us having children maybe later in life and then bumping up against, some school type things, or we're also taking care of our parents at the same time. There's just a lot of stressors on a typical academic week. And if you're throwing in, say, you're applying for tenure and promotion, or you're somebody that's not on the tenure track and you have to negotiate a contract every year, all of these things contribute to a giant, I would say, kind of a schedule that sometimes is a little bit overloaded. This particular week, I learned the hard way because I had a couple of random things happen to me that exploded my schedule and showed me that even though I'm pretty good at scheduling, we do a lot with time management, I did not leave myself enough margin. So here were some of the things that got in the way that kind of blew things up. I have two children. I talk about them sometimes on the podcast, but both of them, for very random, different reasons, ended up having some health issues going on at the exact same time. Nothing life-threatening, fortunately, but just they both happened when I was about 20 minutes away, approximately, from going to teach a class. And from there, I had a little bit of a domino effect where I had to move a lot of things around. One required some emergency dental work due to a stupid accident. It was the kind of thing that once I left for the day, I was not going to come back. So it was going to complicate my schedule there. I also had the fun kind of maybe not kind of fun surprise as I had delivered some groceries that day and I just propped the door open for a second and a mouse ran into my house. Yes, if you're listening to this podcast, it was pretty gross. We caught him right away. So we do not have him anymore, but that also caused a domino effect in the event that some of the things from the day that I had to cancel everything also couldn't be put on the next day because then I called in a pest control service to make sure that, we don't have any more. We don't, thankfully. It was kind of a one-time episode. However, this really taught me something about leaving margin. And so I want to talk through a couple of different things. One, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see some schedules that I'm putting up. I have one showing like a calendar view of kind of what goes on with some of my classes and meetings, and then another one that kind of shows like generally a weekly template. We talked about weekly templates a couple of weeks ago. And for me, I know that I need some time. So I can't just end a class and then boom, I'm in the next activity. I have to either walk there. I might have to change, whatever resources I'm using. I might have to say goodbye to a physical class. And even if I'm staying in the same place, I have to then, log into Zoom or log into Teams. All of us have physical needs. We need to eat something. We need to go to the restroom. We might, maybe I forgot something and I need to run out to my car to go grab it at work. We know all those things kind of in principle. And so I usually do leave myself little half hours here or there. So what you're looking on screen, if you're watching YouTube, is kind of a weekly schedule with just these little holes. I color code all my activities, and then the little white slivers, which are 30 minutes a piece, are what I would call margin. So I thought, well, I've got some pretty good margin in there. I'm fine. I mean, stuff's a little tight because I had mentioned on a previous episode that I have responsibility for 10 classes this semester, which is not normal, and I would not recommend to anybody that has to do it, but it is what it is. And so, I have a very tight schedule. I don't have a lot of room for error, but I thought I had put in enough time for margin. And I realized I really don't for lots of reasons, because even though I built in some little 30-minute windows here and there, and I've got a couple of them every day, So they're just built in as a matter of course. I never assume, like, for example, if I want to be at work at 9 a.m. on Tuesday, there's some times where that is 9:10 because there was traffic, or maybe 9:15 because I just was slow getting out the door, like whatever the reason was. So, I had those margins built in, but what I didn't realize is how stacked my days are on top of each other. So I tend to have a couple of very stacked days in a row, which means I actually might have margin within any individual day. But if that day blows up, the next day doesn't have much to give it. There's just not much there. So another thing I'm showing on the screen is having some of my meetings like all stacked up on top of each other, where there might be 30 minutes between that. But that means that a meeting from yesterday might not be able to be scheduled in there. Okay. So like when I had an emergency, and one of these emergencies, the dental emergency for one of my kids, I had a pretty packed day already, which is showing on the left. Like I started at 9:30. I really wasn't finished till like sometime around 7:30. And I had a lot of like driving of, children back and forth. I had to, go to class, meeting, grade, all the things. And so as soon as I got an emergency phone call, which I got before I had to teach a class, I had to cancel class, which, did give me some margin, right? Because it gave me time to go pick up the child that had the dental emergency and all that. But it also created 30 minutes of time for me to kind of, communicate with my class and revise it for the next day to make sure that I was ready to do it. Because then I had to kind of stuff more content in a Tuesday, Thursday class. If I don't teach a Tuesday, that means I really have to put a lot into Thursday. So that requires some labor that, in my mind, I'm not thinking, hey, where is that going to go? It has to go somewhere. I had a meeting that I had to have this week that I really had to get it in somewhere this week. So it went into an already crowded day and took all my margin on that day. That day, I don't have any. I have about 5 minutes between every activity for that whole day. I'm not looking forward to it. I'm hoping some things end early. And then I also had some rescheduled calls that I managed to get on another day in some open time, but then I really need that open time to do something else. So what I'm quickly realizing is that I don't have it much. I might have margin in individual days in these little half-hour slots, but it's not enough to recover from a day that maybe causes some problems. So here are some things that I want to suggest if this happens to you. One of the things that I did today, actually, the day that I'm doing this, I had one obligation today that I'm recording this. It's all happening in the same week. I'm still living in this week. But one thing that I did is I have a group that I usually run. And for that one, I asked for help. I had somebody reach out and say, hey, I saw you cancel some stuff. Is everything okay? And I said, yeah, kind of. It's a week. But at that point, I just said, hey, I know you're going to this meeting. Would you mind running this meeting for me? I just got to get back a little bit more margin. And the person said yes. So sometimes asking for help is a way to get it. I had a couple things that I ended up moving back 2 weeks rather than trying to cram them in the last busy days of this week. They weren't time sensitive. They could wait a little bit. And I realize I'll probably still need a week to recover from all the things that got messed up this week, which is why I moved anything that could get moved back 2 weeks. I put it where I have a little bit more breathing room. I also shortened some meetings that were an hour to just 45 minutes or 30 minutes to give myself some room. Saying no is always a strategy, and I realize that is somewhat political because some of us can say no to things and there's no penalty. Sometimes you can't. I totally realize that. But I did have somebody that just said, hey, do you have time to take a look at this draft? I said no because I knew I didn't have time. I got very efficient with some of my other strategies and grading. But one other thing I did do is I know for a fact that, when my schedule gets really tight, I cannot rush because rushing causes accidents, it causes errors, it causes me doing a curb job in my car, which will then require me to do something to get it fixed. So one other thing I did, even though I really didn't have it, was I tried to bump up all my travel times. So instead of if something takes 15 minutes, I assume it takes 30. And part of that is just so I'm not rushing around and I feel like I have more margin, even if I don't. So another strategy to take a look at. As we close out this episode, this has nothing to do with margin, but everything to do with writing and efficiency. And we've talked a lot about it on the podcast, but don't forget about our Tuesday toolbox. This is really, really popular. We're getting more subscribers every week. But if you're interested, you can get a Tuesday Toolbox episode for free and check it out. It's just a quick writing video you get every Tuesday, and you can use it to kick off your writing session so you know what it is that you want to write about and get started. So they're great for any area of the writing project and any stage. Happy writing this week.